You don't ask for help. Not because you're especially strong, not because you're unusually capable. You don't ask because, at some point, you learned that needing something only made things heavier, more complicated, more disappointing. So you stopped. You figured things out on your own, again and again. You learned how to push through confusion without asking questions, how to carry stress without letting it show, how to keep functioning even when everything felt like too much. And somewhere along the way, not asking stopped being something you decided to do. It just became how you moved through the world. People usually read this as independence. They say you're self-reliant, easygoing, mature. You don't complain much. You don't lean too hard. You don't ask for reassurance or attention. From the outside, it looks like stability. From the inside, it feels more like restraint. Because people who never ask for help usually aren't trying to prove anything. They're trying to avoid a very specific moment. The moment where they reach out and nothing happens. The moment where their need is visible and unanswered. The moment where asking confirms something they've already suspected but never said out loud. This didn't come from confidence, it came from experience. Earlier in life, asking didn't lead to relief. It led to being brushed off, or misunderstood, or told to handle it yourself. Sometimes it came with guilt, sometimes with silence, sometimes with someone who meant well but didn't really show up. The situations differ, but the outcome is the same. When help doesn't arrive, you don't keep asking forever. Your system adjusts. You start needing less, or at least pretending to. You learn to anticipate problems before they get big. You stay a step ahead so you never have to depend on anyone else. You tell yourself it's safer to deal with things quietly than to risk needing something that might not be there. At first, this works. You become competent, reliable, the person who can handle things. You get through situations that would overwhelm other people. You don't fall apart easily. You keep going. You function. And because it works, you keep doing it. But slowly, without realizing it, the strategy turns into a rule. Don't ask, don't need, don't rely. As an adult, that rule shows up everywhere. You don't ask for help at work, even when you're drowning. You stay late instead. You fix it yourself. In relationships, you listen more than you speak. You support other people but minimize what you're carrying. When something hurts, you tell yourself you'll deal with it later. When you're overwhelmed, you pull back instead of reaching out. Sometimes, when someone offers help, you hesitate. You feel awkward accepting it, like you're taking up too much space, like you should have figured it out already. And if someone insists on helping, something inside you tightens. You think you're getting away with it. You think that because you're staying productive and your voice isn't shaking, you're winning. But your body is keeping a different set of books. When you spend your life suppressing the instinct to reach out, that energy doesn't just disappear. It moves inward. It shows up as a jaw that's always clenched. A shallow breath you don't even realize you're holding. It's that chronic tension in your shoulders that feels like a permanent weight. Psychology calls this somatic compression. It's what happens when the social self is performing competence while the inner self is screaming for a break. You aren't just tired from the work you do, you're exhausted from the energy it takes to hide the fact that you're tired. You're in a constant state of hyper-arousal, always scanned for the next thing you'll have to handle alone, because your brain has forgotten what it feels like to have a safety net. Not because you don't appreciate it, but because needing help still feels exposed, unfamiliar, slightly dangerous. This is the part that often gets misunderstood. People who never ask for help aren't emotionally distant. If anything, they're often very aware of others. They notice shifts in tone. They sense when something is off. They're careful not to burden people. They carry a quiet awareness of how much space they're allowed to take up. That awareness came from somewhere. It came from learning that need had consequences. So instead of asking, you manage. Instead of reaching out, you endure. Instead of saying, I can't do this alone, you tell yourself you'll get through it. And when it gets too heavy, you don't ask for help. You disappear. You go quiet. This is why people who never ask for help often cut people off instead of explaining. Why they withdraw instead of leaning in. Why they stop reaching out first. Because asking would mean breaking the rule that kept them safe for a long time. Underneath all of this is a belief that rarely gets said out loud. If I mattered enough, I wouldn't have to ask. If someone really cared, they would notice. If I have to explain my needs, I'm already asking for too much. So you wait. You hold back. You tell yourself that if help is offered freely, you'll take it, but you won't be the one to expose your need first. Over time, this creates a quiet kind of loneliness. Not the loneliness of being alone, but the loneliness of being surrounded by people who don't know how much you're carrying. People who see how capable you are, but never see how tired you feel. People who assume you're fine because you've never said otherwise. And because you don't ask, they don't offer. Because you don't show strain, they don't see struggle. Slowly, distance grows. Not because anyone chose it, but because no one crossed it. What makes this pattern so hard to change is that it feels reasonable, controlled, responsible. You're not demanding, you're not dramatic, you're handling your life. Until you look back and realize how many things you handled alone that didn't need to be. How many relationships stayed surface level because you never let yourself need anything. How many people assumed you didn't want support because you never asked. How many times you told yourself you were fine when you weren't. The cost of never asking for help isn't failure, it's limitation. It limits how close people can get to you. It limits how supported you feel, even in relationships. It keeps you capable, but contained. And here's the part that's hardest to sit with. People who never ask for help aren't weak. They aren't broken. They aren't emotionally deficient. They adapted early to situations where asking didn't work. They survived by becoming self-contained. That strategy once protected you. But protection has a side effect. It keeps out disappointment, but also care. It keeps out rejection, but also being held. It keeps you safe from being let down, and alone in ways no one can see. The tragedy isn't that you never get help. It's that you slowly convince yourself you don't need it. And because this identity forms quietly, it often goes unnoticed for years. There's no dramatic moment where it feels wrong. No collapse, no clear loss. Just a gradual narrowing of what you allow yourself to receive. You become someone who can survive almost anything alone, but rarely experiences being supported without effort. Over time, connection stops feeling shared. It starts feeling managed, something you ration, something you only reach for when you're sure it won't cost you anything. Eventually, not asking for help doesn't feel like self-protection anymore. It just feels like normal life. And the most subtle cost of all is how invisible your inner world becomes. When you don't ask, people assume you don't need. When you don't show strain, they assume there isn't any. Even the people closest to you stop checking, not out of neglect, but out of respect for the version of you that never asks. That version slowly becomes the only one anyone knows. You don't feel abandoned, you feel self-sufficient. But underneath that sufficiency is a quiet fatigue, a sense that everything rests on you, that it always has. Not because no one would care, but because you learned early that care was uncertain, and handling things yourself was safer. That belief didn't make you strong. It made you alone in ways that felt responsible, reasonable, and earned. And even when you understand all of this, the pattern doesn't disappear. It just becomes something you finally see, quiet, familiar, and still shaping the way you move through the world. If this felt familiar, the next 2 videos show how this pattern keeps going. See you there.